So yeah, they want to groom your kids, but they're grooming them for annihilation. We know that many teachers in this country are groomers, but the question about groomers that isn't asked often enough is who grooms the groomers? In order for teachers to groom children effectively, they must first themselves be groomed. And this means that those of us who wish to uncover, expose, and put an end to the grooming epidemic in public schools have to dig a little bit deeper to answer this question. See where it starts. Because if we simply call out the predator teachers, then we're just pruning the branches of this giant, hideous tree. We're not getting to the roots. That's what brings us to the latest expose from journalist Chris Rufo, who alerts us to a recent conference advertised to and attended by teachers in the Philadelphia School District. The conference, as Rufo reveals, covers such topics as kink, BDSM, trans sex, and, quote, banging beyond binaries. Oh, and the conference was open to children as well. Rufo reports, quote, in early July 2021, the District Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion sent invitations to the Philadelphia Trans Wellness Conference to teachers and staff on the SDP Connect mailing list, promoting the conference as a way to, quote, learn more about the issues facing the trans community. The conference was organized by the Mazzoni Center, an LGBTQ activist organization that has worked with the district on sexual education programs. When reached for comment, the School District of Philadelphia described its promotion of the conference as part of its commitment to creating equitable and inclusive environments and said that it did not have any information on the number of teachers who attended the event. Sure they didn't. Now we have some video from this conference that we're going to play for you. Much of it cannot be played because it's so relentlessly graphic that I'd have to bleep pretty much the whole clip. But before we play them, you need to realize that this nonprofit, the Mazzoni Center, it's influential, well-funded, entirely within the mainstream of the modern left. And speaking of its funding, last year it received $5 million in government contracts. That is, according to its own financial disclosures, by far and away its greatest single source of income. It only made about $200,000 to $300,000 in donations, another $150,000 in grants, and then $2 million from the Paycheck Protection Program. So this is an organization propped up and funded by the government and used to indoctrinate government employees, who then turn around and indoctrinate our children. And also, as referenced, the Mazzoni Center, they create sex education programs, which are then used in schools. So what are they all about? I mean, what do they teach? For that, we turn to some of this footage, which is, I warn you, extremely disturbing and gross, but also important that we see some of this. And we start with a seminar with a trans activist talking about prosthetic penises and, quote, masturbation sleeves. Let's watch.
The purpose of this workshop is to showcase different types of prosthetics available for sex. Almost every single one that I will be showing you, all of them actually, look like penises. I have tried and touched many, all right, prosthetics, real all. This is one of the most realistic feeling in terms of like the inside of a penis, all right? Now, a pack and play is going to be a prosthetic that you can use for sex, but you can also pack with it when you're not having sex. You're just walking around. It's your everyday packer that you just wear in your pants. And then when you're ready to get in the mood, you're boy-yo-yo-yoing and you can go and have sex. But here, it's a big boy. This is like gigantic, all right? Give me 2 hours alone and I'll get this in my butt, you know?
That's a government-funded workshop for teachers. A government-funded workshop for teachers. Now, why would teachers need to know about dildos and prosthetic penises in order to do their job teaching children? The groomer claim is a homophobic conspiracy theory, we're told. I mean, if that's the case, then why is the Philadelphia School District suggesting that its teachers attend a deviant sex workshop? Because the whole grooming thing, it's not happening. This is everything you're seeing right here, none of this is happening. It's not actually happening. It's just your imagination. Another class was titled Trans Sex Banging Beyond Binaries, and here's how the host and leader of that session introduced, I think it's herself, impossible to tell anymore, but introduced herself.
And I'm also a pretty big I wear that title pretty proudly. And I self-identify as kinky and polyamorous, and I also call myself an organizer, because in my free time outside of my day job, I like to get people together to explore their fantasies and their perversions in group.
Hi, I'm Lucy Fielding, and my pronouns are she, they. Please mix them with reckless abandon. I am a resident in counseling practicing in Charlottesville, Virginia. I am also a sex educator, and I'm a white, queer, kinky, polyamorous, visibly able-bodied, Jewish, witchy, non-binary trans femme.
Now, it's difficult to select just one thing for this distinction, but perhaps the most disturbing part of that clip is that the self-described white, queer, kinky, polyamorous, visibly able-bodied, because that needs to be added now to your list of identities, Jewish, witchy, non-binary trans femme is a counselor. And that's not a quirk or a coincidence, by the way. The counseling industry seeks these types out, which is why the entire field must be, I'm afraid to say, distrusted and discounted. By the way, later in this same session, they shared some thoughts about more inclusive terms for body parts that the teachers could learn and, of course, bring into their classrooms. So let's hear some of those suggestions.
So this is how the game's going to work, is that we're going to drop into the chat different words that we like to hear for bodies that are not gendered, that are like completely just fun names for people's bodies. Like a great one, just as an example, just to get it going, and then you all can jump into the chat, is I like people to use the word goodies. Can I touch your goodies? Can I feel your goodies? Thank you to Sierra. That was introduced to me back in middle school. Yeah, chest and front and back hole are great too.
Front and back hole. Quite a romantic way to speak. I'm sure that'll get people in the mood. And there's much more footage along these lines, and worse. As Rufo reports, the conference began with presentations promoting puberty blockers, hormone treatments, breast removals, and genital surgeries. In one session, which was titled The Adolescent Pathway Preparing Young People for Gender-Affirming Care by Dr. Scott Mosser, the principal at the Gender Confirmation Center in San Francisco, explained that he has performed over 2,000 top surgeries, which involve removing girls' breasts, and that there's no age limit for beginning the gender journey. Quote, "I do not have a minimum age of any sort in my practice," he said, explaining that he would be willing to consult with children as young as 10 years old with parental consent. In another session open to children, gender-affirming masculine and feminizing hormones for adolescents and adults, Dane Menken, Divisional Director of LGBTQ Services at Mainline Health, endorsed treatments ranging from puberty-blocking hormones to manual breast binding for masculinizing adolescent girls. He said, quote, "I'm a strong proponent that you can bind for as many hours a day as you can tolerate binding." Now, all of this is horrifying, of course, especially 10-year-old girls. At his practice where he chops breasts off of girls, he would accept a quote patient as young as 10. Now, all of this, of course, would have been considered far, far left, obscure, crazy, fringe stuff only just a decade ago or less. Now it's being taught to teachers in Philadelphia at government-funded workshops. And everything said by these people is obviously disturbing, disgusting, and morally debased, but I would like to focus on just one statement made in the first clip that we played. The woman, as you recall, embraces the term perversion. Okay, that's the term she uses. She openly says that she encourages people to explore their, quote, perversions. Now, that's a very important choice of words because the word perversion literally means corruption. That's what the word means. When something is perverted, it is, by definition, being taken off of its original course. It's being distorted or corrupted, taken away from what was first intended for it. This is the dictionary definition of the term perversion. And that's what this is all about. That's what this conference is intended to do, corrupt the teacher so that they may corrupt the students. When we talk about children being groomed, what we actually mean is that they're being corrupted. This is, in fact, the left's entire sexual agenda in a nutshell, so to speak. And because it's their entire sexual agenda, it's also their entire agenda, period. Their whole worldview revolves around sex. They see nothing but sex. Everything comes back to sex. There's no removing sex from education as far as they're concerned because they cannot remove sex from anything. That's why when you say this, well, why can't you just educate the kids without all this sex stuff? It doesn't even compute. They cannot perceive anything outside of sex. Everything comes back to that for them. These are the ideological progeny of Alfred Kinsey, after all, and he was a psychotic deviant who said that everyone else was a psychotic deviant just like him, and he believed that everyone was sexual from birth and that everything was sexual and that there was no way to separate sex from anything. His disciples believed the same. But their sexual agenda, just like their agenda in every other area of life, it doesn't seek to build or create anything new. It doesn't even, we talk about how they want to normalize this or that, and I think that's not exactly the right word. Because they actually want a world where nothing is normal. There is just the concept of normalcy doesn't exist. What leftism seeks to do is destroy, simply, and leave the ruins to sit there and decay. And it does this in a very literal sense to human bodies. It chops the breasts off of girls and leaves them to live with the scars, mutilated and broken. How will this help them? How will it make them happier? What are they supposed to do now? I mean, you chop their breasts off. You take a 10-year-old girl and mutilate her. What's she supposed to do now? Well, nothing. Doesn't matter to the left. All they want is to take everything that is whole and true and natural and normal and just blow it to smithereens. It is a movement of destruction, especially sexual destruction. So yeah, they want to groom your kids, but they're grooming them for annihilation. Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Matt Walsh Show. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right down there so you can stay up to date on all of our future content.